All right, well, we'll get started and then we'll just let people trickle in as we go. I don't want to waste any of your guys' time. So, for those of you who missed it, my name is Rachel Shipley. I am a STOA speech and debate alumni. I competed for 6 years, and my family was involved for much longer than 6 years. And also, if you noticed in the invite, it said speech orientation with Steve Vaughn. I am the fill-in because he had a family emergency. And so I'm filling in for him. So I'm not Kimberly Guile. I'm also not Steve Vaughn. I'm Rachel Shipley. You're a STOA alum, here to give you a orientation on how to judge speech. So for those who are here who have their cameras on, just by raise of hands, can you show me who has never judged a speech round before? Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got a bit of a mix back and forth. That's perfect. So this is primarily geared to people who haven't judged before, to kind of equip you, walk you through the process so you can feel really, really confident in how to judge rounds. And I just want to say thank you for everyone being willing to judge at the tournament. It is a huge, huge help. Tournaments cannot run without judges. Without judges, rounds don't happen, and these students can't get to experience the wonderful world of speech debate, which I love very much. After all, I did it for 6 years, so you kind of have to like it if you decide to do it for that long. So it's mostly going to be geared towards newer people, but even for people who have judged before, after a summer break from judging, it's really good to get a reminder on some of the basics and some of the fundamentals of judging. So with that out of the way, and just to confirm, everyone can see the slide presentation that says STOA on top. Generally nods, thumbs ups. Okay, cool. I always want to make sure that all the tech is working as it should. So a little bit of an introduction for those who are new to the STOA community. STOA is a speech and debate league that trains Christian homeschooled youth in speech and debate. And the whole purpose and goal of STOA is to create a sort of to empower young people to speak boldly and to change the world for Christ. So we're not just focused on teaching kids how to speak well, we're also focused on their character, on building them up. And the way we do that is by equipping them to speak boldly, right? And to be able to communicate. And I think it's such a lost form in our modern world, especially young people who are, just on their phones all the time on Instagram or TikTok. It really, you get lost in how to actually communicate face to face with people. And that's what the mission of STOA is all about. It's about teaching people how to talk to each other, especially when it comes to speeches. So these are not debates. These are not people arguing with each other. These is a student walking into a room and talking to the judge, right? Communicating with you like you're a real person, not like you're a bot online. So we are a national speech and debate league. So we operate in, I think, around 35 states, although we're open to all 50. I don't know the exact number, but we operate throughout the nation. We are made up of exclusively homeschool students. So there's other leagues for private school students, for public school students. This league is exclusively for homeschooled students because we can get a little awkward if we stay in our homes all the time. We don't learn how to communicate, which is why they put us in speech and debate so we can learn social skills and how to talk to people. We are junior high through high school, so it's ages 12 to 18. And STOA hosts around, as a league, it hosts around 100 tournaments every single year across the nation. So we're big, we're growing, and it's wonderful in my opinion. So this orientation will explain the speeches, the setting and responsibilities, and the ballots. And once again, I'm going to say this like 50 times. Thank you for coming to judge because it really is just such an important thing. My family's been involved in running tournaments, and typically the thing that always makes tournaments run behind is because we don't have enough judges. And if we don't have enough judges, we can't get the rounds started, which means the whole schedule gets thrown completely out of whack, and it's really stressful for everybody. So thank you so much for coming. This is scheduled to be a 2-hour session. I'm going to try and get it done in less than 2 hours, just because I want to really be respectful of your time. So I'm going to run through this presentation, hopefully within 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'll open up the rest of the time for any questions. Then once we have that, we'll wrap up. So it's kind of the what to expect. Okay, so there are multiple speech events within the STOA community that are split into basically 4 different categories. The first is interpretation. So that's the events of humorous, dramatic, duo, and open interpretation. And interpretive speeches are basically where competitors will act out, right? Almost like theater where they'll act out different characters, except each student is doing it in a suit. They don't have props. They don't have anything fancy. They don't have a background. They're just standing in a room in a suit. Sometimes the girls are in heels and they're acting out a story, right, within a specific time. So that's what interpretive speeches are. And it's an interpretation of a piece of literature. And then you have platform speeches. So platform speeches include original oratory, persuasive, and expository. These are more informational in nature. And instead of so much trying to interpret a piece of literature, they're trying to teach you something or tell you something. And it's a speech that is prepared ahead of time. So they plan it out, they memorize it, and then they present it to you. And then the third category is limited prep. Limited prep is where, kind of in the name, the students have a limited amount of time to prepare these speeches. So it's extemp, which is short for extemporaneous, Mars Hill, apologetics, and impromptu. So they have a set amount of time to prepare for them. They'll receive their topic at some point throughout the tournament. They'll have anywhere between 2 minutes and 30 minutes to prepare for their speech, and then they'll go in and give the speech. So it's different than platforms where they have pretty much an unlimited amount of time to write out their script, to memorize their script, to perfect it. And then the last category is wild card. These are speech events that only stay for 2 years. So every 2 years, the STOA board, which is kind of like our governing board of the really smart people who know what they're doing, they get together and create a new speech event for people and for the students. And then we vote on it, decide which one happens. So that's the wild card event. So it's a new one every 2 years. So for the purposes of this orientation, because the tournament that you're going to be judging at is only offering limited preparation speeches and the wild card speech event, I'm not going to go over the different interpretation speeches and the different platform speeches because you guys won't be judging that, and so it's not really relevant to you guys. But if you come back and judge at later tournaments, we will be talking about those because those will be events that the tournament will be offering to students. So today we're just going to focus on extemporaneous, Mars Hill, apologetics, and impromptu, and then the wild card event, which the wild card event is slam poetry, and we're going to dive into each of those. So to start off with limited preps, kind of just as a category, as I said, there's those 4 events. The speech is prepared on site, and the judges are provided a copy of all the topics or questions that the students could end up presenting on. And so you'll get a little sheet of paper, kind of like this, and then I'll have a list with all the different things. Don't look at this. This is my speaker notes. Don't pay attention to that. But the idea is that they would have that so you can see what they could possibly talk about even before they walk into the room. And the prep time and the speaking time will vary based on the event. And so you're going to get what's called a ballot that will show you what the time should be for that. And it'll have all those details on it. So for limited preparation, let's talk about 2 of the main events. The first one is apologetics. So apologetics is a speech event where the topics are theological in nature. And the point of it is to be a defense of your faith, right? So the students ahead of time before the tournament even starts, at the beginning of the year, the STOA board releases a list of topics, right? Questions, concerns, common concerns about the Christian faith. For example, who is the Holy Spirit? What does it mean to be born again? What does it mean that God is omniscient? All these questions or critiques of the Christian faith, they'll get a list ahead of time, and then they prepare speeches on all those topics. The topic list is about 100. And the speech themselves may be evangelicus, it may not, right? It might have the gospel in it, and it's like when you think of the gospel, right? How people present that, where you're trying to convert people, that might be the nature of it. But if it's a speech if the topic itself is a little bit more theological, right? And it's maybe doesn't exactly have that, then that may or may not be there. And if someone wants to judge apologetics, they have to agree with the STOA statement of faith, because what we don't want is people who aren't of the faith, judging this event and maybe bringing in their views for the students. So you have to agree to the STOA statement of faith to judge. And I'll have a copy of that at the end of the slide. If anyone wants to take a picture, read through it for themselves. So apologetics, it's all about defending your faith and answering common questions about the faith. For Mars Hill, the topics are from media, such as books, movies, songs, podcasts. The idea behind Mars Hill is that we want students to identify and explain an issue or a philosophy that is revealed by the topic. So for example, this was one of my favorite events that I did. What I would do is they have, different books, different movies. You'd watch the book or you'd watch the movie or read the book, right? You're trying to figure out what is the creator of this story, right? The creator of the song, what was their motivation in writing it? What were they really trying to get at with this? And what's that underlying philosophy? And then how does that relate to the Christian faith? Right? So the idea is for students to provide a researched biblical response that compassionately leads listeners to the biblical truth. And it's supposed to be very conversational. So it shouldn't sound super speechy. It should just sound like if you were talking to a friend and you're like, oh, you read this book? I read this book, or let me tell you about this book that I read. Here's basically what it was talking about, and here's how that relates to my faith and kind of that idea. So with both of these apologetics and Mars Hill, the way it works is students get a list of possible topics before the tournament even starts. And then when they go into the room, they'll draw 3 slips, right? And of those 3 slips, they'll have 3 of the possible 100 topics that they could have talked about. So they pull their preparation out and then they give the speech based on that. So it is still considered a limited prep event, right? Because they don't know what they're going to be giving ahead of time. They can't memorize the speech. Although they can do some preparation, the preparation is limited. In both of these events, it's important to note that the content outweighs the delivery for this, right? So what they say matters a whole lot more than how they say it. So if the competitor is stumbling over their words a little bit, if they aren't, maybe walking in with as much confidence, right? If the delivery isn't as good, but the content is really, really good, they're really defending the faith well, they're presenting logical arguments. They really understand the book or the movie or the song, and they're really connecting that to biblical truth. Even if they don't do it in a way that is really pretty, the content of their speech matters a lot more than the delivery of that speech. Moving on to the next 2 events. The third event we're going to talk about is impromptu. And this is a very wide variety of topics. I competed in this one as well. It's very fun. You could end up speaking on anything. I would get something like this, like a little mushroom candle. I would get this, walk into the room, I maybe get a mushroom candle and I don't know, maybe a candle in the shape of a pumpkin and a candle in the shape of a a little leaf, right? And then I would have to choose one and then prepare a speech on that on the spot, right? So they get 2 minutes of preparation time. So they pull something completely random. It can be a physical object, it can be a quote, it can be a color, it can be a food. I pulled so many different random things out of bags. You kind of stick your hand in there, you don't know what you're going to pull out. But what the purpose of this event is to demonstrate on the spot thinking, right? It's you have 2 minutes, no idea what this thing is, and you just have to on the spot come up with a speech for it. And what students are supposed to do is communicate the theme and the topic in a memorable way, right? If they just get up there and I start talking about how mushrooms are cool and they have spots and some people like to eat them and some people don't like to eat them, and I'm just talking on and on about mushrooms and there's really no point to my speech, you're not really going to remember that, right? After the speech is over, that's not really going to stand out to you. And so what they need to do is take that topic, right? And they need to talk about it. If I talk about how much I like mushrooms and my mom used to cook with mushrooms, and then I proceed to talk about my mom the whole time instead of mushrooms, that's not me talking about the topic. That's me talking about something completely different, right? So the goal is they take the topic, but then they talk about it and they expand on it. Maybe you talk about the 3 different aspects of growing mushrooms or the 3 different health benefits of mushrooms or wherever they want to take it, right? The prompt needs to be central to the theme. It needs to be the central theme of the story. But it's really an amazing event because students can take it in so many different directions, and it's really cool to see how they do that. Okay, the 4th event is extemporaneous. And extemporaneous is about, the questions are about recent news stories, right? So the purpose of this event is to analyze current events using a variety of sources. The student needs to take a position on that topic. And this was also, I did all the limited preps, by the way. So everything we talked about, I actually competed in, which is kind of fun. So, I'm not just making this up as I go, I actually did this. Extemporaneous is really good if you don't like listening to the news, but you want to learn about the news. Fantastic, because someone will talk to you about it for 7 minutes and you have to sit there and listen, regardless of whether or not you really felt like it. So it's a great way to get your little news in. And what they're supposed to do is not just talk about the topic, they need to take a specific position and then be able to articulate why they stand by that position based on like the question, right? Like, will Donald Trump's tariff policies harm the US economy? Right? That would be an example of a question. They would need to take a position on that, and they have plenty of time to do so. And they should use different news sources, right? This news source quoted this statistic, this news source quoted this analyst who has this to say about it, which is why I take this position. So that's the idea of extemporaneous. It's definitely the most rigid of the speech events because there is an assigned order and there's assigned speaking times, just the way preparation works for this. So the students have to go one by one in the order that was decided before the round began. But we'll talk more about that later. All right, the wild card for this year is slam poetry. So it's a thematic expressionistic presentation of poetry. The poetry can be original, it can be published, or it can be a compilation of the two. So they can write it themselves, or they can use a really famous one or a less famous one, whatever they want to do. It can be a compilation of the two. And the idea is to have vocal variety with limited movement. So if you've ever seen slam poetry, it's different than the like a theater presentation, right? Or an interpretive presentation where they're running around and moving and acting out all these crazy things. They're supposed to have limited movement, kind of generally be in the same spot, and really present the piece using their vocal, using different tones and different rates of speaking and all sorts of vocal variety they can put in there. And this is really fun because all the other ones, you kind of have to just stay quiet. You can smile and nod, but in this one, you actually get to participate a lot. You get to snap. I'm really bad at snapping, so I'm not going to demo that, but you can imagine what that'd be like. Or you can clap. I can clap, so that works well for me. So if I judge slam poetry, I'll be more likely to clap than snap. But you can do either of those so long as it's not disruptive to the speech, right? Even if you really enjoy the speech, if you start clapping really loudly in the middle of the speaker's presentation, it's probably going to mess them up. So just, try and be aware of them, how they're presenting, but it is nice for you to participate. And that's you as the judges. Anybody watching, anybody in the audience can participate in this event, which is really cool. Okay, with that, before we move on to how you judge, that's just the overview of the speeches. Do we have any questions? Let's see. I don't see anybody with their hands raised. So with that, we'll keep on moving. But if at any point, by the way, if anyone has a question as I'm presenting, I'm not a stickler. You can interrupt me at any point. If you're an experienced judge who has maybe a different point of view on something, you can also interrupt me and we can talk about it. I was also a debater, so I like debating. So feel free to interject at any point. I want this to be as interactive as possible. I'll try and keep moving so we get through this quickly. I know it's late and people are probably tired. So let's keep moving. Okay. Next thing is that judges, you can in fact judge. A really common thing that we get from judges, especially when I've tried to recruit people to judge, they'll be like, well, I don't know if I'm qualified to judge. Judging sounds big and scary. Like I'm not sure like if I'm qualified to do this. But the really cool thing about the STOA community is that you absolutely can. The purpose of STOA, right, is to teach kids how to communicate, how to talk to actual people. And who are people from the community? They're actual people. These are the people you'd be interacting with on a day-to-day basis, right? The average person in a work environment, your next door neighbor, is not going to be someone with, like me, right, with years and years of speech and debate experience who knows this in and out. It's just going to be a normal person on the street, which is why we love what we call community judges, people from the community that come to judge these tournaments, because it teaches kids how to actually talk to people, right? How not to talk like debaters, especially if you've ever watched a college debate. They don't know how to talk at all. They're talking a million miles a minute and nobody can understand them, right? So the point of this is to teach people how to communicate to the average person. So some general things to keep in mind is that you, as a judge, it is great. We really appreciate it if you can be responsive, right? You are the audience. And as a competitor, I can say it's kind of intimidating when you walk in there and all the judges, they look like this. They've got stone faces. They look like they're frowning the whole time. It can be, I've had judges look angry at me and it was terrifying. And I was like, I went up to them afterwards. I was like, are you scared? Or so I was like, I'm scared. Like, did I do something wrong? Like, why did you look so angry at me? You didn't smile the whole time. If you naturally have a resting face that's kind of not smiling, that's fine. But as responsive as you can be, if you can smile, you can nod. It's really great for the students, especially the younger ones. We have little 12-year-olds who come in here who are terrified. So as encouraging as you can be gives them the best experience. We ask that you set aside your personal bias and your expertise. Some of the judges know a lot more about the topics than the students do. Some of them have very strong feelings about the topics. The point of this is not to necessarily convince someone to a different point of view. The purpose of speech and debate is to train kids how to communicate, right? And so we ask that when you're judging, you set aside maybe your biases, your expertise, and you judge the kids based on how they performed, not based on what you know about the topic, not based on your position on the topic. This is especially true from personal experience in the apologetics event, which was the event about defending your faith. STOA is a Christian community, and so we all signed the statement of faith we'll look at later. But that statement of faith is pretty broad, and there's a lot of theological differences in the STOA community, a lot of people from different Christian denominations. And so you get judges, sometimes some judges have very strong theological views, and if a student presents a different theological point of view in a round, sometimes the judges rank them down for this. We ask that you not do that. If you want to have a theological conversation with the student after you've filled out your ballot and turned that in, we'll talk about that in a bit. You can talk to the student afterwards, but please don't take that into judging because that's not the purpose of what this event is. Thirdly, we want your opinion, right? You are the judge. So we ask that you don't consult with other judges. We ask that you don't consult with the audience members when you're making your decision about how each student did. We want to get your opinion, exactly what you think about the student, not what other people convinced you to think about the student. And then please give feedback that will motivate and educate the students. So if you could refrain from making severely negative comments on the ballots, that would be great. Constructive criticism is absolutely welcome. It's really, really important. We want constructive criticism, but we also want to motivate and educate the students, not make them feel bad about themselves. Even if the speech wasn't great, try and be encouraging as much as you can while being honest and providing that constructive criticism. Also, please don't discuss speech content with speakers. So when the speaker finishes their speech, the timer beeps off. Please don't talk to them about the speech. You can say good job, you can say thank you for giving that speech, but don't try and converse with them right then. If you want to talk to the student, you need to wait until after you've made your decision, after you've ranked the students, turned in the ballots. That way you can make sure that your opinion of the student's speech is based on their speech, not based on your conversation after their speech. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, next is the setting. So we ask that when you go into the room, so let's start even before that, since we're not even at the tournament yet. Usually we give this presentation while you're at the tournament. We're not even there yet. So you'll get to the tournament, you'll see a sign that says community judge parking. If you get lost, you can find someone who looks like they know what they're doing and ask them where you're supposed to park. They'll have parking for you. Park there, follow the signs to where you see community judge check-in. From there, you'll find a table set up with some very helpful people who can get you checked in to be a judge and direct you where to go from there. From there, you'll go to what we call ballot push, or they might give you ballots at the community table. They'll tell you what to do. Basically, you're going to get a little packet, sheets of paper. These are your ballots, and on there, it'll say where the room is, where you go. So then you follow the room numbers. If you need, there'll probably be people in orange vests, right? The facilities people that will tell you where to go. So you go to your room, and then in that room, you're going to see what's designated as the judge table. This is your table that you get to sit at. And it will usually have a big timer, big red timer on it. It should be pretty clear where to sit. If not, you guys can also kind of decide where you want to sit, so long as all the judges are sitting at the same table as much as possible. And so sit at the assigned table, turn off your phone, please turn the ringer off. I turned the ringer off of my phone before this meeting, so it wouldn't be going off, right, being disruptive. We ask the same thing for students. As they present, we don't want phones going off, people's phones getting blown up because something happened in the group chat that was crazy and nobody can believe it. All these alerts will be really disruptive for students, so please turn off your phone. Please wait for all of the judges before starting the round. One issue that we have sometimes is the number of judges for speech events can vary. It'll typically be between 1 and at points once we get to the more advanced out rounds, right? So once you get further and further in the competition, it can get up to like 5 or plus judges. But for most of the preliminary round, just the regular rounds, they'll be between 2 and 3. Occasionally you'll have one, but typically we try and get at least two, hopefully 3 or 4. So wait for all the judges to come in before starting the round. If you have a question about about how many judges there should be, they should tell you this when they give you the ballot. You can ask when you get the ballot, and you can also ask a facilities person how many judges should there be. So please make sure you know how many judges there's supposed to be. Make sure all the judges are there before you start the round, because once the round starts, if all the judges weren't there and a kid already gives their speech, that's kind of a problem. And I won't have to solve it because I'm not the tournament director, but the tournament director will, and I know her, and she's lovely. So on her behalf, please wait to start the round till you get all the judges. Please note that audience members may come and go between the speakers. So while the speaker is giving their speech, nobody should be leaving that room. Nobody should be entering that room. But after and in between the speeches, that's when people can leave the room, can enter the room. That way it's not being disruptive to anybody. If you need to take a bathroom break while you're, judging, please wait till after the speech ends. And then in the break time in between, go run to the restroom or run to the restroom beforehand. Okay. The head judge is going to be the one who is in control of the timer. Because after all, these are timed speeches, so you need a way to keep track of that. So if you are the head judge, and they'll tell you this when they give you your ballot, whether or not you're going to be the head judge, whether or not you're not going to be the head judge, you're going to have basically a big timer. It looks kind of like this, except it's red, and it has a little timer screen, and it's got normal buttons. And so when the speaker is giving their speech, you want the timer facing the competitor and counting up, right? So they can see how much of the speech time they have left. So it doesn't count down, it counts up. So they can see I've used 30 seconds, I've used a minute, I've used 2 minutes. We trust their math to be good enough for them to know how much time they have left and do the math themselves. But it should be facing the timer and counting up, and it will confirm if there's any penalties. When students go egregiously over the time limit, they receive a penalty for that. They get ranked down. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Please stay until every competitor has presented their speech. Please don't leave before they're all done, even if you're bored. We ask that you stick it out and stick with them. They're trying their best and you're trying your best. And note that the competitors may speak out of their listed order. So when you get your ballot, there will be a list of the order that speakers will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It usually is 8 speakers, anywhere between 6 to 9 typically speakers. That order does not matter unless the event is extemporaneous. If the event is extemporaneous, where you have the set order, then they need to present in that order. Otherwise, it doesn't matter if they present in that order or a different order. We ask, nope, we already talked about that. Yeah, after the round is finished, so after all the speakers have gone, given their speeches, you're going to take your stack of papers, and then you're going to go to the judge hospitality area. They will have wonderful things like coffee and tea and water and snacks for you to enjoy as you finish out your ballots, finish writing on them. We'll talk about that in a bit. So we have a judge hospitality area that's designed specifically for you guys to give you the best judging experience. So we ask that you enjoy that while you fill out your ballots. Okay. There are 2 types of ballots that you're going to get in your little packet. The first is a tabulation ballot. And in this is, this ballot's going to go to the tabulation room, right? That's where the room where they figure out all of the how the competitors did throughout the tournament. So that's how they figure out who's going to win, who's going to not win, who's going to be first, second, third, fourth overall in the tournament. And so this is the sheet of paper over here that goes to them. It has the rules printed on the back of it. You can't see the back side of this, but the rules are printed on the back. And then here it will be the names of the speakers, and then you'll fill in what their topics are. And then it ranks in the room. So that's the purpose of the tabulation ballot. We'll look at that in more detail in a second. When you get your packet, this will be printed out with the name of the speaker. We ask that when they hand you this ballot, they're going to say, hey, please check this to see if you have any conflicts of interest. This would be if maybe the student who invited you, right, to this, or maybe your grandkid, or maybe your neighbor, or maybe your little brother, or maybe a friend of yours, right, is in that room, and you cannot judge them without bias because maybe you like them a lot, or maybe you don't like them. Maybe this is someone you really dislike, and you shouldn't be judging. Hopefully you like everybody, but in case there's someone you don't like, don't judge them. So when they say check for conflicts of interest, you'll look here, look at the names, think about who they are, think about if you know any of them. If you know them too well, in either direction, then please don't judge them. Okay, and then this is the students' ballot. This is where you're going to write the feedback for the students, and these ballots will go to the students themselves. So students do not see the tabulation ballot, only the team figuring out the rankings of the tournament. And we'll look at this and some of the other tournament officials, but the students will see this ballot. Okay, so for the student ballot first, please copy up here the speaker, the room, and which round it is onto here. That just helps with the organization for making sure the right ballots go to the right students. You're going to put your name here because the judge equals you. So you'll put your name here. The event time, this is a original oratory ballot. So you won't be seeing these at the event at the tournament because this isn't an event we're offering. But for this event, it's a 10-minute speech time. So you can see the event time there. And then the duration is where you will put down the length of the speech, how long they actually talked for based on that timer that you started earlier. There are no minimum time limits, right? So there are maximum time limits if a speaker goes over the allotted time plus 15 seconds. So anything, so 10 minutes and 15, 10 minutes and 16, 10 minutes and 17 is automatically a penalty for them because they need to stay within the time. 10 minutes and 14 seconds, they don't get a penalty. But so there's a maximum, but there is no minimum. So if they get up there, they talk for 30 seconds, that's fine. They don't get a penalty. In my opinion, the most important thing about the speech is not how long it is, it's about how good it was, right? The quality of the speech itself. So I would prefer short and sweet over a speech that's completely filler, that doesn't matter at all. However, that said, the longer your speech is, typically the more information you can fit in that speech. So the longer speeches are oftentimes more quality than the shorter ones. For example, a speech that's, if it's supposed to be 10 minutes, a speech that's 9 minutes is probably better than a speech that's 3 minutes, right? Because 3 minutes isn't a lot of time to break all of this down. So you'll see competitors who fill up their speech time usually do better, but not necessarily if it's just all a bunch of filler and doesn't matter. And then right here is where you will jot down the topic, right? What they were talking about. You don't have to use the exact words that they were used, as long as they can see it and read it and understand what round specifically this was and what the topic was. All right, still on the student ballot, these are the different things that you're going to use to evaluate the speaker, how good they were, how not good they were. So for original oratory, things like structure, rhetoric, language, impact, all these different things. This part will change based on what the event is, because not all event is the same, not all the goals of the event is the same. But if you're wondering, well, Rachel, like, how do I decide which speaker was better? How do I decide which speaker had better quality than the other? You look at these criteria here. And then, going over here, you're going to rate the student's performance on an evaluative scale. So 1 is bad, poor, 5 is excellent. These numbers aren't used by the tournament to determine the points or the rankings of the students, but they are important. As a student, I really appreciated, some judges don't take the time to fill these out. I really appreciated when they did take the time because it would tell me if they ranked me maybe a 3 on content, but maybe a 5 on delivery. I would know that my style was really good, but I would know that maybe I needed to work on my substance a little bit more. So it's really helpful when you can fill these out. Down here, you will record any penalties that the student gets. And also please confirm these penalties with whoever is the head judge. And then typically there aren't penalties, it's pretty rare, but there will almost always be a more experienced judge in the room with someone who's less experienced. And so they can kind of walk you through that process and we'll talk about it more as we go. Over here is the comment section. Please provide feedback for what worked, what didn't work. You're given 2 minutes in between speakers to jot down your initial thoughts, and you'll have more time to complete your ballots after the round. So the speakers will kind of come in rapid fire but you get a couple of minutes in between the speeches in order to write down your thoughts. And then if you didn't have time to write everything down, you want to evaluate again, you can take more time after the round to finish filling out all of your feedback, everything that worked or didn't work. It says here 2 minutes between speakers. That is for non-limited preparation events. So for things like slam poetry, where the students have memorized that poem and they're going to present it, in between the speakers coming in, you'll take that timer, you'll set it for 2 minutes, counting down, not counting up this time, and that'll be those 2 minutes you have to take notes on the speaker that just went. For limited prep events like apologetics, impromptu, Mars Hill, the students will prepare for 4 minutes. They'll sit in the room quietly, they'll pull their topic slips, they'll prepare their speech. So in those 4 minutes, that's the time you get to evaluate the last speaker that went. So you won't set the timer again for another 2 minutes for those. Extemporaneous, another limited prep, but you will do the 2 minutes because the speakers prepared outside of the room. And as you get into the specific event, it will make more sense for the room you're in. Hopefully I didn't lose you in all the explanations of the 2 minutes and everything. But let's keep moving. So one thing that judges sometimes struggle with, because there can be up to 9 students per room, is by the 9th student, you kind of forgot the first student and the second student and the third student. A lot of times judges are like, well, I don't remember the speeches that were before. How on earth am I supposed to rank which one is better? This is a strategy that we suggest. I found it to be very helpful when I've judged. It's an idea called stacking your ballots. Right. And you consider at this point, you're considering the order without the penalty. So you're not thinking about worrying about penalties. If there weren't any penalties, if anybody went overtime, you're not going to worry about that. Right now, you're just going to worry about the order. So you would have, let's say the first speaker comes in. His name is Mark Twain. Also, I didn't make these slides, but I like it. Mark Twain. Mark Twain comes in, gives a fantastic speech. You're like, you know what? That Mark guy was really amazing, but he was also the first speaker. You're just going to put that sheet of paper just like right here. Then the next speaker, Ben Franklin, comes in. You write the notes about him and you decide, well, he was really good, he had really good style, but his content wasn't quite as good as Mark. So you're going to take Ben and put Ben underneath. So Mark's number 1, he's on top. Ben's underneath, he's number 2. Then the third speaker comes in and her name is Marie. And her content was okay, better than Ben's, but then again, her style wasn't quite as good. So she's kind of in between these 2 students. So you take that third sheet of paper, you put Marie in between, underneath Mark and above Ben. So as you're going, what you're doing is you're building up this stack of paper in the order of how the students were. So you're kind of almost ranking as you go, which can help you decide. If for some reason you're like, I can't decide between these 2 students, you can just put them next to each other in that order. So what that prevents is you after the round having like a bajillion pieces of paper everywhere and being like, I don't know what to do. There's paper everywhere. I don't know who to put in what position. If you've been stacking them all along and kind of ordering them as you go, it just makes it a lot easier in the end. Because you're kind of evaluating as you go. So after all the speakers, you're going to confirm any penalties with the head judge. So if you thought there was a penalty, just be like, hey, I think there was a penalty. Like, can we confirm this penalty happened? Or if not, the head judge might say, there's no penalties. You all are free to go. The reasons in which you can get a penalty. So a penalty can happen if a student goes over time, more 15 seconds or more over the allotted time for the speech. Or I believe it's in platform speeches. So that would be slam poetry if they're reading from a script instead of having the speech memorized, because platform speeches are supposed to be memorized, right? Then they would also get a penalty for that because they didn't do it properly. They didn't memorize their speech. So you're going to confirm if there's any penalties with the head judge. Then you're going to go to the judge hospitality area to finish your comments and complete your questions. And you're going to ask the judge orientation staff if you have any questions. I'll be at the tournament for at least part of it. So if you see me, you can talk to me, ask me. If not, you can find another official looking person. I don't know if I look official, but find someone who looks official, who looks like they know what they're doing. Any of the people that help you check in, any of the people, that'll be a table at the judge hospitality, a place for you to turn in your ballots. After you finish, you can also talk to them. And before you start circling ranks like you saw on the student ballots, you're going to complete the tabulation ballot. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I have it here. So, make sure Oops, he was a little glitching. Okay, so this is the tabulation ballot. So Mark Twain gave a speech on cave tours. Alexander Hamilton I love these names, gave a speech on savings plans. Harriet Tubman gave a speech on railroad ties. And so this is the rank that you would put them in. So I thought, Mark Twain did the best, then Ronald Reagan. Oh, I love Ronald Reagan. Then Harriet Tubman, right? So you're going to rank these. You're going to use the original rank column to record the speaker ranking based on how you ordered them. If you did the stacking, based on that stacking of things. And there can be no ties. Even if two students were particularly good, you have to choose between one or the other, unfortunately. Ties don't work for this format of event, so you have to choose. If there's no penalty, then you're just going to take this and you're just going to carry it forward to the final rank. So 1, 7, 3, 2, and so on. If there is a penalty, you're going to go to the ballot return. That's that table in the judge hospitality, the room with the good, yummy food. There'll be a table there called ballot return with people that will help you sort out how the final ranking should be. So ask them if there's a penalty and they'll walk you through that. Okay, so for ranking, you're going to circle, and this is on the student ballot, not on the tabulation ballot. So this is what the students actually see. One of the key differences is, well, there's all the comments and feedback for the students, but you also look at the ranking, there's first, second, third, fourth, and fifth and below. The reason we have fifth and below is because we have some very young speakers, kids who are 12 years old doing this for the first time. And if they see that they got eighth by every single judge in every single round, that's going to be really disheartening for them. And so we don't disclose it to the students if they were fifth and below. If they were in the bottom 50%, they don't see like that they were eighth or seventh, because that would kind of destroy some kids' self-esteem and they wouldn't want to do it anymore. So instead, we just have fifth and below. So for ranks 5 through 8, circle fifth and below. Some judges circle fifth, and then other judges circle and below. Please don't do that. The student doesn't need to know that they were sixth and below. Just circle fifth and below. You don't have to do that. That hurt my feelings sometimes, but maybe that's just past trauma coming up for me. Okay, I'm kidding. I don't have trauma. I have the Holy Spirit, and so I'm doing well. All right, so please provide your reason for ranking. This was one of the things that mattered most to me when I was a student, is to compare the speakers in the room. So under here, here's going to be where you put your general feedback. Under the reason for ranking, you're going to put why they did not, if they were first, why they ranked the most highly. Like, what about their speech made them the best? Was their content the best? Did they quote the most Bible verses in apologetics? Did they quote the most news sources in extemporaneous? Did they have the best logic of all the speakers? You're going to put that there if they're first. If they're second, what did the first place speaker do that was slightly better than them? Right, this is what really helps students excel, because it can be kind of confusing if you're getting second all the time and you never get first, and everyone says you did fantastic, or especially if you get fifth and below and it just says you did amazing. It's like, well, I appreciate that you thought I did amazing, but why did I get ranked so lowly? Like, if I did amazing, why am I fifth and below, right? So it's nice to write encouraging things, but if you can sort of figure out in your brain, kind of puzzle out why they were ranked fifth and below, if they didn't speak as long, if they didn't speak as clearly, if you couldn't understand them, that will be really, really good to help them improve. Okay, a few final reminders. Before judging, please read the description, goals, and presentation rules that will be on the back of your tabulation ballot. We would be here all night if we went through all of the events and all of the goals and presentation and description for all the events. You guys would definitely be asleep at that point. So we're not going to go over that. For the event that you end up judging, that information will be once again on the back of the tabulation ballot. So before the round starts, please review that and read through it. If there's any penalties, don't circle the student ranks until ballot return assists you. It will get confusing and it will get messy if people start going rogue and circling things with penalties, and it can be really easy to mess that up. So just let ballot return assist with that. Once ballots are complete, please take them to ballot return and wait as they review them. They're going to go through and make sure that all the numbers add up, that everything makes sense, that there's no mistakes. If you leave before they finish reviewing it, it's going to be they're going to have to track you down. We're going to have to send the hounds after you to track you down and drag you back so we can make sure everything was as it's supposed to be. The judge orientation staff, myself, plus there will be other people at the tournament that will be available for questions. And please have fun knowing that you're doing a really, really important job, that you're serving a really important role in this tournament and in the lives of these students. Finally, thank you. Once again, I promised I would say it. I'm going to keep saying it. Thank you for judging. Thank you for sitting through this presentation. I hope it wasn't boring for anybody. I know this was scheduled late. Hopefully everybody stayed awake. Hopefully nobody drifted off. If you did drift off, I'm not mad. I had like an energy drink before this, so I'm like hyper and ready to go. If you did drift off, there is a recording that you can watch. You can go back and watch the recording, find what you missed. If you missed this at all, if you're not even here right now, and I'm speaking to people in the future, thank you for watching the recording. That's also important. And as I promised, here is our statement of faith. You can take a little picture of this, take a screenshot. If you want to judge apologetics, you just need to agree to all of these things. With that in mind, that is the end of this presentation. And yes, as I thought, we finished in less than an hour. So we have approximately an hour and a half to answer questions. I kind of doubt that we'll take all that time, so hopefully you guys will get out early. But if anybody has a question, I'm here. Feel free to ask it. And please ask it if you have a question. It'll be so much easier. It's so much easier to answer questions preemptively than for things that were your question to become a problem later on during the tournament. And then it's kind of a mess and you have to clean it up. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it. If not, I'll just say I did a really good job and no one had any questions.
I just want to say thank you very much for this presentation. And I know it's very informative. I did have questions about the process. I was wondering how exactly it would work, and this I'd say answered everything I was wondering. I do have one question. I got two emails. One was for a Zoom meeting next Thursday on the 22nd. Is that something different?
Yes. So I want to double check. Um, yeah, so there is another Zoom meeting. I forget if it's on the 22nd or the 21st, but it's sometime next week. That is going to be an orientation on how to judge debate. So this was an orientation on how to judge speech. So in the tournament, there's going to be a lot of different events. There's going to be events and speech events. So we just covered all the speech events. The debate events are where you have multiple students in the room and where they are arguing with grace and poise. It's not just, bickering, it's actual debating, but people are talking and giving speeches and arguing with each other. So that's a completely different form of debate that takes a different form of speech and debate, I suppose. That's the debate side of speech and debate. And that takes a little bit more time to explain. So we're not covering it tonight, but tune into that one. And I don't know who's teaching it. Might be me, might be somebody else. I have no clue. But it will be wonderful no matter what, because the people running this tournament are wonderful.
Great, thank you.
Mhm. All right. Well, now that the awkward silence is dragged out, I will take that to mean that nobody else has any questions. And so with that, I stop the recording.